The Martian dust swirled around Brock Callahan's worn boots as he trudged home from another grueling day at the settlement's maintenance yard. The setting sun cast long shadows across the barren landscape, painting the rocky terrain in hues of deep orange and red. Mars had been his home for nearly 5 years now, but he still hadn't grown accustomed to the desolate beauty of it all. Brock's shoulders ached from the day's labor. At 42, he wasn't the young soldier he once was. The Mars Colony Maintenance Corps didn't care much about his decorated military past. To them, he was just another pair of hands, another cog in the machinery keeping this fragile outpost functioning. The settlement, one of the earliest established on the Red Planet, had seen better days. What had once been a beacon of human achievement now resembled more of a frontier town barely hanging on. As Brock approached his modest prefabricated home on the outskirts of the settlement, he spotted his 10-year-old son, Lucas, sitting on their small porch, tinkering with one of Brock's old circuit boards. The sight of his son brought a rare smile to his weathered face. Lucas was the spitting image of his mother, Sarah, the same curious eyes, the same determined set to his jaw. The thought of Sarah sent a familiar pang through Brock's chest. 3 years had passed since the radiation poisoning from her work on the lunar mines had taken her, yet the wound still felt fresh. "Hey, Dad," Lucas called out, waving enthusiastically. "I fixed the comms relay. Want to see?" "That's great, buddy," Brock replied, ruffling his son's sandy blonde hair as he climbed the steps to their porch. "But it's getting late. Let's get dinner started." Inside their small dwelling, Brock began preparing their evening meal, synthesized protein with the few fresh vegetables they could afford from the hydroponic gardens. Life on Mars wasn't cheap, especially for a single father with limited income. The Settlement Corporation provided the basics, but anything beyond that came at a premium. "How was work today?" Lucas asked, setting the table with their mismatched plates and utensils. "Same as always," Brock replied, not wanting to burden his son with the reality of his situation. Today, like most days, had been filled with menial tasks far below his skill level. Before coming to Mars, Brock had been an aerospace engineer in the Earth Defense Force, specializing in propulsion systems and emergency repairs. Now, he was lucky if they let him fix a climate control unit. "Did you get to work on any spaceships?" Lucas's eyes lit up with excitement. The boy had an insatiable fascination with spacecraft, a passion Brock quietly encouraged despite the unlikelihood of Lucas ever leaving the Martian colony. "Not today, buddy, just routine maintenance." Brock served their modest dinner and sat across from his son. "How was school?" As Lucas launched into an animated account of his day, Brock's mind wandered. He'd come to Mars with Sarah, full of hope for a fresh start. The colony had been recruiting skilled workers, promising good pay and a chance to be part of humanity's greatest adventure. But shortly after their arrival, the corporation had downsized, and Brock found himself demoted to general maintenance. Then Sarah got assigned to the lunar mining operation, and everything fell apart. After dinner, as Lucas worked on his homework, Brock retreated to his small workshop behind their house. This space, cluttered with salvaged parts and tools, was his sanctuary. Here, among the familiar smell of machine oil and metal, he could pretend he was still doing meaningful work. Tonight, he was attempting to repair an old atmospheric processor, a side job that would bring in some extra credits if he could get it functioning again. Hours passed as Brock lost himself in the work, his calloused hands moving with practiced precision. It was well past midnight when a sharp, unfamiliar sound pulled him from his concentration. He straightened, listening carefully. There it was again, a high-pitched whine followed by a mechanical groan coming from somewhere beyond the perimeter fence. Curiosity piqued. Brock grabbed his toolkit and an old military-grade flashlight. The settlement had strict rules about venturing outside the perimeter after dark. But Brock had never been one for following pointless regulations. Besides, the sound had an oddly familiar quality to it, like a spacecraft with failing stabilizers. The Martian night was cold and still as Brock made his way across the rocky terrain. The twin moons, Phobos and Deimos, cast weak light over the landscape, enough for him to navigate without using his flashlight. The sound grew louder as he approached a small ravine about half a kilometer from his home. What he found there stopped him in his tracks. A spacecraft unlike any he had ever seen rested at an angle against the ravine wall. It was small, perhaps the size of an Earth shuttle, but its design was completely foreign, all smooth curves and iridescent material that seemed to shift colors under the moonlight. The craft was clearly damaged, a section of its hull was torn open, and a thin stream of luminescent fluid leaked from what Brock assumed was the propulsion system. More startling than the craft itself was the figure crouched beside it. Even in the dim light, Brock could tell it wasn't human. The being stood on two legs but was taller and more slender than any human, with four long, jointed arms working frantically at an exposed panel of the ship. Its skin, if that's what it was, had a faint bluish glow, and what appeared to be tendrils or appendages extended from its elongated head. Brock should have been terrified. Humanity had made contact with only 3 extraterrestrial species since beginning interplanetary exploration, and relations were tense at best. Unauthorized contact was strictly forbidden, but instead of fear, Brock felt a surge of professional interest. Whatever this being was, it was struggling with a mechanical problem, something he understood all too well. He stepped forward, intentionally making noise to avoid startling the alien. The being whirled around, all 4 arms raised in what might have been a defensive posture. It made a series of clicking sounds that Brock couldn't hope to understand. "I'm not going to hurt you," Brock said, setting down his toolkit and raising his empty hands. "I heard your ship. Sounds like you've got stabilizer issues. Maybe worse." The alien tilted its head, studying him. After a moment, it lowered its arms and made another series of clicks, then gestured toward the damaged craft. Brock took this as an invitation and slowly approached. Up close, the technology was even more fascinating. Despite the unfamiliar design, he could recognize the basic principles at work. The alien moved aside, allowing him to examine the damaged section. "Your power coupling's fractured," Brock muttered, more to himself than to the alien. "And this looks like a coolant leak. If you're running a plasma drive, that's a dangerous combination." The alien made a sound that might have been agreement. It pointed to the damaged components, then to Brock's toolkit. "You want me to fix it?" Brock asked. The alien nodded, a surprisingly human gesture that made Brock wonder if it had encountered humans before. Common sense told Brock to walk away. Helping an unknown alien with unknown technology could be seen as treason, or worse. But something else, perhaps the engineer in him, perhaps the memory of being stranded himself during a military operation, made him reach for his toolkit. "I'll help," he said simply, "but I can't promise anything. Your tech is different." For the next few hours, Brock worked on the alien craft, guided by occasional gestures from its owner. Despite the strange design, the underlying principles were familiar enough for him to make progress. The alien seemed impressed by his improvisation, using parts from his own toolkit to replace damaged components. Dawn was breaking by the time Brock sealed up the last panel. The ship hummed to life, the luminescent fluid now flowing properly through what he had determined was indeed a plasma-based propulsion system. The alien made a series of rapid clicks and gestures that Brock interpreted as thanks. It reached into its craft and produced a small, crystalline object, offering it to him. "No need," Brock said, shaking his head. "I didn't do this for payment." The alien hesitated, then retracted the object. It studied Brock silently for a long moment, its large, multifaceted eyes unreadable. Then, with one final gesture that might have been a salute, it climbed into its ship. The craft rose silently, hovering for a moment before shooting upward with surprising speed, leaving only a faint trail of light in the morning sky. Brock watched until it disappeared, then gathered his tools and headed home. His mind racing with questions about the encounter, he felt strangely satisfied despite his exhaustion. For the first time in years, he had used his skills for something that mattered, something beyond routine maintenance. As he approached his home, he saw Lucas standing on the porch, still in his pajamas, looking concerned. "Dad, where were you? I woke up and you weren't here." "Sorry, buddy," Brock said, setting down his toolkit. "I heard something outside and went to check it out. Just some equipment malfunction at the perimeter." He hated lying to his son, but explaining the truth would only raise more questions Brock himself couldn't answer. Besides, Lucas had enough to worry about without adding illegal alien encounters to the list. "Come on," he said, guiding Lucas inside. "Let's get breakfast started. You've got school, and I've got work." They fell into their morning routine, with Brock making their simple breakfast while Lucas prepared for school. Neither noticed the faint shimmer in the sky above their home, nor the silent observation taking place from far above the Martian atmosphere. Brock walked Lucas to the settlement's small school, then headed to the maintenance yard, his body protesting the lack of sleep. Throughout the day, he found his mind wandering back to the alien ship and its strange pilot. Had he done the right thing? Would there be consequences? The questions nagged at him as he mechanically went through his tasks. By the time he picked up Lucas from school and they returned home, Brock was dead on his feet. After dinner, he collapsed onto his bed, intending to rest for just a moment before helping Lucas with his homework. He was asleep within seconds. The next morning, Brock awoke to Lucas shaking his shoulder frantically. Dad, wake up! There are weird ships outside!" Brock shot up, instantly alert. "What ships? Where?" "They're huge and black, 3 of them, just hovering around our house." Heart pounding, Brock rushed to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 massive obsidian black vessels hung in the air around their small home. Each was at least the size of an Earth military cruiser, with sharp, angular designs that somehow conveyed menace despite their stillness. They formed a perfect triangle, with Brock's house at the center. "Lucas, stay inside," Brock ordered, his military training kicking in. "Get your emergency pack and wait in the safe room." "But Dad..." "Now, Lucas!" As his son reluctantly obeyed, Brock grabbed his old service pistol from its locked box. It would be useless against vessels of that size, but the familiar weight in his hand offered some comfort. Before he could decide on his next move, a beam of intense white light shot down from the largest vessel, striking the ground directly in front of his porch. Rather than burning or destroying, the light seemed to solidify, forming a column that stretched from the ship to the ground. A figure began to descend through this column of light, a tall, humanoid being with metallic silver skin that caught the morning sunlight. As it reached the ground, the light column dissipated, leaving the figure standing alone on Brock's doorstep. Steeling himself, Brock opened the door and stepped onto the porch, keeping his pistol hidden behind his back. "Brock Callahan," the figure spoke, its voice oddly melodic yet clearly artificial. "I am Zenthral, emissary of the Interplanetary Council." Brock's mind raced. The Interplanetary Council was supposed to be a myth, a rumored alliance of advanced species that monitored and sometimes intervened in the affairs of developing spacefaring civilizations. If they were real, and if they had sent 3 warships to his home. "What do you want with me?" Brock asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Zenthral's featureless face seemed to shift, forming what might have been a smile. "You assisted a stranded traveler yesterday, a being not of your world." Not a question, but Brock nodded anyway. "I fixed a ship, That's what I do. Indeed. Zenthral's head tilted slightly. What you may not know is that the traveler you assisted was Zalanthi, chief technologist of the Cepheid Confederation and a high-ranking member of the Council. Brock felt the blood drain from his face. He had helped patch up the ship of one of the most important aliens in the galaxy, using spare parts and improvised tools. The Zalanthi's vessel suffered a catastrophic failure during an inspection tour of this sector. Zenthral continued, "Your assistance, freely given without question or demand for compensation, has not gone unnoticed." "I didn't know who they were," Brock admitted. "I just heard a ship in trouble." "Precisely," Zenthral said. "Your actions were not influenced by knowledge of Zalanthi's status. You acted out of pure ethical imperative and professional respect. This is rare and valuable." Brock shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I appreciate the visit, but if this is about breaking contact protocols, I didn't mean any harm. I was just helping someone in need." Zenthral made a gesture that might have been dismissal. "This is not about punishment. Brock Callahan, I am here to extend an invitation." "An invitation?" The Interplanetary Council oversees many technological initiatives across multiple star systems. We have observed that skilled technicians who understand both the theoretical and practical aspects of spacecraft maintenance are in high demand. Your work on the Zalanthi's ship demonstrated not only technical aptitude, but adaptability and innovation. Brock stared at the alien emissary, trying to process what he was hearing. "Are you offering me a job?" "We are offering you an opportunity," Zenthral corrected, "to join the Interspecies Technical Corps, a recently formed division of Council operations. Your role would involve diagnosing and repairing a variety of spacecraft and related systems, working alongside technicians from many worlds." For a moment, Brock was speechless. It sounded impossible, like something from the adventure stories he used to read to Lucas. Then reality reasserted itself. "I can't leave Mars," he said firmly. "I have a son, a life here." "We are aware of Lucas Callahan," Zenthral replied. "The opportunity extends to him as well. The Council maintains educational facilities for the dependents of its operatives. He would receive an education far beyond what is available in this settlement." Brock's mind whirled with possibilities: a better life for Lucas, a chance to use his skills for something meaningful again. But it seemed too good to be true. "Why me?" he asked. "There must be thousands of engineers more qualified, with better credentials." "Credentials are not what we seek," Zenthral said. "The Zalanthi was impressed by your intuitive understanding of unfamiliar technology, your resourcefulness, and your willingness to help without expectation of reward. These qualities are valuable to us." Before Brock could respond, the door behind him burst open, and Lucas rushed out onto the porch. "Dad, is that an alien? Are those spaceships?" His son's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. Brock instinctively moved to shield Lucas, but Zenthral made no threatening moves. Instead, the emissary inclined its head in a respectful greeting. "You must be Lucas. Your father has been offered a position of importance with the Interplanetary Council." Lucas looked from the alien to his father, then back again. "Really? Like working on actual spaceships?" "Indeed," Zenthral confirmed. "And you would accompany him, continuing your education at our facilities." Lucas's face lit up, but Brock raised a hand. "Wait, this is a lot to take in. I need time to think." "Of course," Zenthral agreed. "However, I should inform you that the offer is time-sensitive. The Council's vessels will depart this system within 48 of your Earth hours." Brock nodded, his mind still struggling to process everything. "I understand. I'll have an answer for you tomorrow." "Very well." Zenthral produced a small, crystalline device similar to the one the Zalanthi had offered him. This communication module will allow you to contact me when you have reached your decision." With that, the emissary stepped back into the column of light that had reappeared and ascended to the ship above. The three black vessels moved in perfect synchronization, rising higher until they were mere specks in the Martian sky, then vanishing completely. Brock stood on the porch, the communication device clutched in his hand, staring at the empty sky. Beside him, Lucas practically vibrated with excitement. "Dad, the Interplanetary Council! Real aliens! This is the coolest thing ever!" "Lucas," Brock said carefully, guiding his son back inside. "We need to talk about this. It's not a simple decision." "What's not simple?" Lucas demanded. "They offered you a job fixing spaceships. You always said that's what you were meant to do." "It's more complicated than that." Brock sighed, sitting at their small kitchen table. "We'd be leaving everything behind. This has been our home since—" He trailed off, thinking of Sarah. Lucas's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. "Since Mom died?" "Yes." "But Dad," Lucas said, sitting across from him, suddenly looking older than his 10 years. "Do you really think Mom would want us to stay here, where you fix broken air filters all day and I go to a school where half the learning modules don't even work?" Brock was taken aback by his son's perception. He'd tried to shield Lucas from the reality of their situation, but clearly, the boy understood more than he let on. "It's not just about what we'd leave behind," Brock explained. "It's about what we'd be getting into. We know nothing about this council, these aliens, what they really want from us. We know they have awesome spaceships," Lucas pointed out, "and they must be pretty important if they sent 3 huge cruisers just to talk to you." Despite his concerns, Brock couldn't help smiling at his son's enthusiasm. "There is that." "Can we at least think about it?" Lucas pleaded. "Really think about it, not just say no because it's different or scary." Looking into his son's hopeful eyes, Brock felt something shift inside him. When had he become so cautious, so resigned to their limited existence? The man he used to be, the soldier, the engineer, the explorer who had eagerly signed up for a new life on Mars, would have jumped at this opportunity. "All right," he agreed. "We'll think about it. Seriously, think about it." Lucas's face broke into a wide grin. "Yes, thank you, Dad." As his son raced off to his room, presumably to start packing, Brock turned the crystalline communication device over in his hands. The rational part of him screamed that this was madness, leaving their home to work for a mysterious alien council based on a single encounter. But another part, long dormant, whispered of adventure, purpose, and a chance for both him and Lucas to have something better. Brock didn't go to work that day. Instead, he spent hours researching whatever limited information was available about extraterrestrial contacts and the rumored Interplanetary Council. The settlement's network had little to offer beyond speculation and conspiracy theories. By evening, he was no closer to making a decision. After putting Lucas to bed with strict instructions not to tell anyone about their visitors, Brock sat on the porch staring at the night sky. The stars seemed especially bright tonight, as if beckoning to him. "What would you do, Sarah?" he whispered. In the years since her death, he'd often found himself asking this question, imagining her practical, adventurous spirit guiding him. Tonight, he could almost hear her answer, "You already know. Brock, you're just afraid to admit it." The next morning, after a fitful night's sleep, Brock made his decision. He activated the communication device as instructed and waited. Within minutes, the 3 black vessels reappeared in the sky above his home. This time, when Zenthral descended, Brock was ready. "I'll accept your offer," he said without preamble, "on one condition." Zenthral tilted its metallic head. "State your condition." "I want a guarantee that Lucas will be safe, that he'll get the education you promised, and that if at any point either of us wants to return to human space, we can—" "These terms are acceptable," Zenthral replied. The Council values consent and free will. You and your son may leave our service at any time. Though we hope you will find the experience rewarding enough to stay." Brock nodded, a strange mixture of anxiety and anticipation churning in his stomach. "When do we leave?" "Immediately, if you are prepared. The Council vessel is scheduled to depart this system within hours." Brock glanced back at their small home. They didn't have much to pack: some clothes, Lucas's favorite books and toys, a few mementos of Sarah. Everything important could fit in 2 bags. "Give us 30 minutes, he said. Zenthral inclined its head in agreement and returned to the ship. Lucas, who had been listening from the doorway, burst onto the porch. "We're really going? For real?" Brock knelt down to his son's level. "Yes, we're really going. But Lucas, this is a big change. It might not be easy. We'll be among aliens, with different customs, different technologies. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Lucas's expression grew serious. "Dad, we've been stuck here since Mom died. Nothing ever changes. Nothing ever gets better." He gestured toward the settlement in the distance. "Do you really want to keep fixing their broken stuff forever?" Hearing his own thoughts echoed in his son's words, Brock pulled Lucas into a tight hug. "When did you get so wise, huh?" "I get it from Mom," Lucas said with a small smile. "Yeah," Brock agreed, his throat tight. "Yeah, you do." They packed quickly, leaving most of their possessions behind. Brock sent a brief resignation message to the maintenance yard, knowing they would find someone else to take his place within days. As they stepped onto the porch with their bags, the column of light appeared once more. "Ready?" Brock asked, taking his son's hand. Lucas nodded, eyes fixed on the waiting ship above. "Ready." Together, they stepped into the light and felt themselves rising. Mars falling away beneath them. Through the transparent column, Brock could see their little house growing smaller, then the entire settlement, until the Martian landscape stretched out below them like a vast red canvas. They emerged into a cavernous hangar bay within the largest of the black vessels. Zenthral awaited them, along with several other alien beings of various forms and sizes. Some appeared vaguely humanoid, while others were completely foreign in design. Floating crystalline structures, multi-limbed creatures with exoskeletons, beings that seemed composed entirely of shifting light patterns. "Welcome aboard the Nexus," Zenthral said. "This vessel serves as both transport and training facility for new Council associates." Lucas stared wide-eyed at the assembled aliens, his grip on Brock's hand tightening. "These are your fellow inductees," Zenthral explained. "Technicians and specialists from various systems who, like you, have demonstrated exceptional aptitude and ethical character." One of the aliens, a stocky humanoid with mottled green skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, stepped forward. "Welcome," it said in heavily accented but understandable English. "I am Grell, engineering specialist from the Procyon system. It is good to have another mechanical expert join us." Before Brock could respond, a chime sounded throughout the hangar. "The Nexus prepares for departure," Zenthral announced. "Please proceed to your assigned quarters for the acceleration sequence." A holographic map appeared before them, highlighting a path through the vessel. Brock and Lucas followed it, passing through corridors filled with technology beyond anything humanity had achieved. The walls themselves seemed alive, shifting and reconfiguring as they walked. Their quarters were surprisingly comfortable, a spacious room with what appeared to be customized accommodations for human physiology. 2 beds, a sitting area, and what Zenthral explained was an environmental customization station that could produce food, clothing, and other necessities suited to their needs. "Rest now," the emissary advised. "Your orientation will begin once we have cleared the solar system." After Zenthral left, Lucas explored every corner of their new home, marveling at the technology. Brock sat on the edge of one of the beds, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. They were on an alien vessel, leaving the solar system, heading for... he didn't even know where. "Dad, look at this," Lucas called, standing before a large viewport that had appeared in one wall. Beyond it stretched the vastness of space, with Mars now a small reddish dot among countless stars. Brock joined his son, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Quite a view, huh?" "It's amazing," Lucas whispered. Then, "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" Brock's chest tightened. "Yeah, buddy, I think she'd be very proud, and probably a little jealous that we're getting to have this adventure without her." Lucas leaned against him. "I miss her." "Me too, every day." They stood together, watching as the Nexus accelerated, the stars stretching into lines of light as the vessel entered what Brock assumed was some form of faster-than-light travel. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The next several weeks passed in a blur of new experiences. Brock began his training with the Interspecies Technical Corps, learning about technologies far beyond human understanding. The work was challenging but deeply satisfying. For the first time in years, he felt his skills being put to meaningful use, his expertise valued and expanded. Lucas thrived in the Council's educational program, absorbing knowledge of different species, star systems, and technologies with the eager enthusiasm of youth. He made friends among the children of other Council associates, some human, others distinctly not. Brock marveled at how quickly his son adapted, how easily he accepted beings of completely foreign biology as playmates and peers. Their first major mission came 3 months after joining the Council. The Nexus responded to a distress call from a remote mining outpost in a system Brock had never heard of. A critical life support system had failed, threatening the lives of over 200 workers from various species. Brock was part of the technical team dispatched to address the crisis. The system was unlike anything he had worked on before, but the principles were familiar enough for him to contribute. Working alongside specialists from 5 different worlds, he helped design and implement a solution that stabilized the outpost's environment. Watching the grateful faces of the saved miners, some with features he would have found bizarre just months ago, Brock felt a profound sense of purpose. This was what he had been missing on Mars, not just the challenge of meaningful work, but the knowledge that his skills were making a real difference. As months turned into a year, both Brock and Lucas found their places within the Council's vast organization. Brock's reputation grew as he tackled increasingly complex technical challenges, often finding innovative solutions that even the more experienced alien engineers hadn't considered. Lucas excelled in his studies and began talking about eventually joining the Junior Technical Corps himself. Their living situation improved dramatically. From the initial quarters on the Nexus, they were eventually transferred to a permanent Council facility, a massive space station orbiting a neutral star. Their new home was spacious and comfortable, with all the amenities they could want. Lucas attended a proper school with other children, while Brock was assigned to a specialized repair and innovation team. One evening, as they sat in their living area, enjoying a meal that perfectly replicated Sarah's favorite pasta recipe, courtesy of the station's advanced food synthesizers, Brock reflected on how far they had come. "You know," he said to Lucas, who had grown several inches in the past year, "a little over a year ago, we were eating synthesized protein in our little house on Mars, and I was fixing air filters for ungrateful colonists." Lucas grinned. "And now you fix hyperspace stabilizers for grateful aliens." Brock laughed. "Something like that." He twirled pasta around his fork thoughtfully. "Do you ever miss it? Mars, I mean..." Lucas considered the question seriously, a habit he'd developed as he matured. "I miss some things, the way the sunset looked on the rocks, the little garden we tried to grow, but mostly..." He hesitated. Mostly, I just missed seeing you happy. You weren't happy there, Dad. The simple observation hit Brock like a physical blow. Had it been that obvious, even to a child? I tried to be, he said quietly. I know, Lucas assured him, but you're actually happy now. You smile more, you talk about your work, you don't just come home and stare at nothing anymore. Brock reached across the table and squeezed his son's hand. You're too observant for your own good, you know that? Mom always said I got that from you, Lucas replied with a smile. The next day, Brock received a surprising communication. The council was organizing a major technological conference, bringing together representatives from dozens of spacefaring civilizations, including humanity. As one of their most successful human integrations, Brock was invited to speak about his experiences and the potential for greater cooperation between Earth and the Council. The conference would be held on Earth itself, a neutral gesture of goodwill from the Council, which typically operated in the shadows of human awareness. For Brock, it meant returning home for the first time in over 6 years. The journey back to Earth was surreal, traveling aboard a Council diplomatic vessel, with Lucas excitedly pointing out familiar constellations as they approached the solar system. Brock felt like a stranger returning to a half-forgotten homeland. The conference was being held in Geneva, at the headquarters of the United Earth Space Administration. As their vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, Brock marveled at the lush blues and greens of the planet, colors so vibrant compared to the rusty reds of Mars. A small delegation of high-ranking Earth officials greeted them upon landing. Brock noticed their poorly concealed awe at the Council vessel and the various alien representatives who disembarked alongside him and Lucas. Mr. Callahan, one official said, extending a hand. I'm Director Hammond of UESA. It's an honor to welcome you back to Earth. Your departure from Mars caused quite a stir in the colonies. Brock shook the offered hand. I imagine it did. There were many questions, Hammond continued, about where you had gone and why. Rumors of alien abduction, even though I see now that wasn't far from the truth. The last part was said with a nervous laugh. Not abduction, Brock corrected firmly. Opportunity. The following days were filled with meetings, presentations, and diplomatic exchanges. Brock found himself in the unexpected role of bridge between humanity and the Council, explaining each to the other. His practical experience with both worlds made him uniquely qualified to highlight the potential benefits of closer cooperation. The night before his main address to the conference, Brock stood on the balcony of their hotel room, looking out over the lights of Geneva. Lucas had already gone to bed, exhausted from a day of playing tour guide to his alien friends, proudly showing them Earth's wonders. Penny, for your thoughts, came a voice from behind him. Brock turned to find Zenthral, who had taken on a more humanoid appearance for the conference. Just thinking about how strange life can be, Brock replied. 1.5 years ago, I was a nobody on Mars, fixing broken equipment and barely getting by. Now I'm speaking at an interplanetary conference on Earth. You were never a nobody, Brock Callahan, Zenthral said. You were simply in the wrong place for your talents to be recognized. Brock leaned against the railing. Why did you really choose me? Zenthral. There must have been thousands of engineers across human space more qualified than a maintenance worker from a failing Mars colony. Zenthral was silent for a moment. The Council has observed humanity for many centuries. Brock, we have seen your remarkable progress, but also your troubling tendencies toward conflict and self-destruction. When the Xalanthi encountered you, they saw something rare, a human who helped without expectation of reward, who solved problems with both technical skill and empathy. I just fixed a ship, Brock said, uncomfortable with the praise. You did more than that. You demonstrated the best qualities of humanity, creativity, compassion, and practical problem-solving. The Council believes these qualities, if encouraged, could help humanity avoid the destructive paths that have claimed other promising species. So I'm what? A test case? Proof that humans can play nice with the galactic community? In a sense, Zenthral admitted, but you are also valued for yourself, for your contributions to our collective work, as is Lucas. Brock thought about this. And tomorrow's speech? What's that meant to accomplish? A beginning, Zenthral said simply, a first step toward greater integration of humanity into the larger community of spacefaring civilizations. Whether that step leads to a longer journey is up to your species to decide. The next morning, Brock stood before an audience of humans and aliens, more nervous than he'd ever been during his military service or his most challenging technical missions. Lucas sat in the front row, giving him an encouraging thumbs up. Taking a deep breath, Brock began to speak. A little over a year ago, I was a forgotten man on a forgotten outpost, using my skills to fix broken machinery that no one else cared about. I had resigned myself to that life, believing it was all that remained for me. Then one night I heard the sound of a failing stabilizer coming from beyond the settlement perimeter. He recounted the story of meeting the Xalanthi, fixing their ship, and the subsequent arrival of the Council vessels. He spoke of the opportunities he and Lucas had been given, the wonders they had seen, and the meaningful work he had found. I'm not here to tell you that the Council is perfect, or that joining a larger galactic community will solve all of humanity's problems, he continued, but I can tell you this. There is a universe of possibilities out there, far greater than we have imagined. And in that universe, the qualities that truly matter aren't the ones we often value most on Earth. Wealth, status, power. What matters is what you can contribute, how you can help, what problems you can solve. Looking out at the rapt faces, both human and alien, Brock felt a surge of conviction. I believe humanity has much to offer the galactic community. Our adaptability, our creativity, our determination in the face of challenges. These are strengths recognized and valued by the Council. But we also have much to learn about cooperation, about seeing beyond our immediate self-interest, about recognizing the value in diversity, not just of opinion or culture, but of biology and evolution itself. He gestured to the various alien representatives. These beings come from worlds we can barely imagine, with histories spanning millions of years. Some breathe methane, others exist primarily as patterns of electrical energy. They think differently, perceive differently, value differently. And yet, working alongside them, I've found more common ground than I ever would have believed possible. As he concluded his speech, Brock looked directly at Lucas. I accepted the Council's invitation not just for myself, but for my son, because I believe the future belongs to those who can bridge worlds, who can see potential in the unfamiliar, who can find solutions where others see only problems. That is the legacy I want to leave, not just for my child, but for all of humanity. The applause that followed was thunderous. Humans and aliens alike rose to their feet, united in appreciation of his simple but powerful message. As he stepped away from the podium, Lucas rushed forward to embrace him, followed by Zenthral and several of their Council colleagues. In the days that followed, Brock participated in numerous discussions about potential cooperation between Earth and the Council. Progress was slow but promising. Some Earth officials remained suspicious, others eager to embrace the new possibilities. Through it all, Brock maintained his practical, straightforward approach, focusing on specific projects where human ingenuity could complement alien technology. On their final night on Earth, before returning to their Council home, Brock took Lucas to a quiet spot in the Alps, away from the diplomatic bustle. Together, they lay on the grass, looking up at the stars, the same stars they had gazed at from Mars, the same stars they now traveled among. "Dad," Lucas said, his voice thoughtful. "Do you think Mom would be proud of what we're doing?" Brock put his arm around his son's shoulders. "I know she would, buddy. She always believed we were meant for something more than just surviving. She would have loved seeing you grow into the person you're becoming." Lucas nodded, satisfied. "I think she'd be proud of you, too, for taking the chance, for not giving up." "I almost did, you know," Brock admitted. "Before that night, before the Xalanthes ship, I was close to accepting that our life on Mars was all we'd ever have." "But you didn't," Lucas pointed out. "No," Brock agreed. "Sometimes all it takes is one opportunity, one moment where you choose to help instead of turn away." As they lay there, Brock thought about the strange, winding path that had led them here, from Earth to Mars, from isolation to integration with a community of worlds, all because he'd heard a strange sound in the night and decided to investigate, all because he'd chosen to help without asking why or what he might gain. The next morning, as they boarded the Council vessel to return to their new home among the stars, Brock felt a sense of completion. They weren't leaving Earth behind. They were helping to build a bridge between Earth and something greater. Just as he had once been a forgotten man on a forgotten outpost, humanity had been isolated on its small blue world, unaware of the vast community waiting to welcome them. That welcome wouldn't always be easy or smooth. There would be misunderstandings, conflicts, challenges to overcome, but looking at Lucas, eagerly chatting with his alien friends about their Earth adventures, Brock knew it would be worth it. The universe was vast and complex, but at its heart, it operated on a principle he had always understood: the value of fixing what was broken, of making connections where none existed before, of helping simply because help was needed. As the ship rose through Earth's atmosphere, Brock watched his home planet recede, becoming once again a beautiful blue marble against the blackness of space. But unlike before, he wasn't leaving with a sense of loss or exile. This time he was departing as an ambassador, a bridge builder, a man who had found his purpose in the vastness between worlds. And all because one Martian night he had fixed a strange alien's ship.